Hey guys, I'm going to be making mozzarella cheese today. All you need is some milk, a little vinegar, a pinch of salt. Follow along. I had mentioned how I make mozzarella cheese back in my farmer's cheese video, and it's a very similar process. One extra step to make it into mozzarella. And again, I've got some milk here that's starting to reach its end of life. It's not bad. It's not spoiled milk, but you know what I mean. It kind of has that taste, that smell. So rather than just throwing the milk away, we're going to make some cheese with it. So I'm going to start by just pouring it into a pan. And you can do this with a whole gallon of milk. You can do this with a quart of milk, whatever you have. And you can just change your measurements based on the amount you're using. I'm going to call this a gallon of milk. It was a little bit used, but it's mostly a gallon. So I'm just going to put that in a pot. I'm going to get this on the stove. And what we want to do is bring this to about 105 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want to bring it to a boil, but we do want to warm it up quite a bit. So I'm going to get this on the stove, and then we'll see you as soon as it's at temperature. Okay, I don't know if you can hear that, but my alarm is going off. Our milk has hit temperature. It's currently at 109 degrees. And for those of you who know what this is, it's a clothespin. We still hang our clothes on clotheslines. I use that to hold the thermometer in the milk. These things tend to like flip out and fall. So I use, pro tip, I use a clothespin to hold my thermometer in whatever I am heating. Now that our milk is to temperature, here in the background, I've got water on the heat as well. We want to get some hot water for a step that we're going to be doing later. But the next thing we want to do is, actually, I'm going to take this off the heat, and we'll be adding 1/2 cup of vinegar to this so that we can bring out the curd. So I'm just going to move this off the stove, and we're going to find another place to work. Okay, I just took the milk off the stove, and what I'm going to do is add 1/2 cup of vinegar. And I'm just going to slowly kind of stir that in. And what you're going to notice it doing is it's going to start curdling the milk. We're going to let this go for a few minutes. You can see there's some chunks stuck to my slotted spoon here. We're going to stir this until all of the curd separates from the whey. It'll all float towards the top. I'll give you a better look at what that looks like. And then we're going to spoon the whey. You can see there's some chunks already forming. We're going to spoon that into a strainer. I'm going to use a wire strainer. If you don't have a wire strainer, you can use cheesecloth, however you want to handle that. But we want to scoop the whey into a strainer where we can strain out any extra whey. We're not going to press it into a hard cheese, but we want to let it kind of drip a little bit and get some of that whey out so it's not completely wet and falling apart. And you'll see what that looks like once this is done. But I'll bring you back as soon as the milk is ready to start ladling out. Okay, well, it looks like it's all set. It's been about 10, maybe 15 minutes. It takes a little time for the vinegar to kind of separate the curd from the whey, as much as it can. I could rush this, but then I wouldn't really be getting my money's worth. So I let it run. It looks like it's not getting any more out of the whey. So what I'm going to do now is kind of just scoop that whey or the curd to one side of the pot. Kind of press it a little bit, try to stick it together into a blob. Okay, it will fall apart a little bit. I'm going to take this and just scoop it right into my wire sieve or strainer. And then we'll get all this scooped over and start pressing it a little bit. Now, I don't necessarily recommend doing this with old milk. That's how I use the old milk, to keep from wasting it. But really, you're going to get a better outcome with the fresher the milk, the better. And whole milk, and the closer to raw milk, the better. Right out of the cow, preferably. It doesn't need to be pasteurized because of the type of cheese this is. We just want a nice, thick, rich milk. Unfortunately, that's not what I'm doing today, but just to show you that it's possible. This is just old whole milk bought from the grocery store. Really nothing special about it. We didn't use all of it. Normally, Marilyn gets milk to either make yogurt or for baking. And I used a little bit for something that was baked the other day. And I didn't use the whole gallon. I figured, well, maybe we'll make some yogurt or get back to it. And it was one of those things where it was left at the back of the fridge for a little while. And it's nothing that I'd give the grandkids as a glass of milk. It's starting to get that taste to it. Not quite spoiled yet. Otherwise, it would be in the compost. So I figured, you know what? I'll extend the life of it, make some cheese. And mozzarella cheese is always good to have on hand, especially with the price of cheese these days. Making your own fresh mozzarella, nothing like it on a pizza or on lasagna or however you want to use it. You can either keep it in balls, or I'll show you how I shred it. Shredding fresh mozzarella sometimes can be difficult because it's a very soft cheese. But if you freeze it first, then you can shred it. And then once it's shredded, you can either keep it refrigerated, or whether it's shredded or not, if you want to keep it for a really long time, mozzarella cheese freezes real well. You should be able to freeze it for up to a year and use it anytime. Just let it thaw, and you can either slice it or shred it. But anyway, let me get all of this moved over. Once I'm done with that, I'll bring you back and show you the next step. Okay, now that I've got all of that in the wire strainer here, what I'm going to do is just kind of press it in on itself. Try to bring that glob together into one ball. So I'm just going to slowly work this and try to squeeze off a little bit of the water. I'm not pressing it down into the sieve. I'm just kind of moving it around on the sieve. And I'm not overly concerned about getting it super dry, because in a minute we're going to take this and dunk it in hot water. This is where your hands are going to have to, you're going to have to toughen up your hands a little bit, because you're going to be using fairly hot water. If you don't want to get your hands in the hot water, you can use a spoon to press the cheese and move it around in the hot water, but eventually it's going to have to come out of the water. So hopefully your hands aren't overly sensitive. If that's the case, when you take it out of the hot water, you may want to let it cool just a bit before you start working it with your hands. Okay, and this is starting to look pretty good. As you can see, all I'm doing is kind of just shaping it and trying to bring the pieces together. Okay. And I'm Italian. I'm going to have my hands in my food a lot when I cook. If that grosses you out, you may want to avert your eyes. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to pick it up out of the strainer and I'm going to squeeze it a little, almost like you're making a snowball with it. Okay. All right, so here I've got my cheese ball and I'm just going to squeeze it a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to make a mess here, but that's okay, it's cheese. And I'd do anything for a really good mozzarella cheese. Making a bit of a mess, not a problem. But all I'm going to do is just keep kind of squeezing it lightly. I'm not trying to squish it between my fingers. I just want to kind of squeeze it and slowly shape this into a ball. Squeezing out as much of the way as I can and bring this all together. And this is something you'll get a feel for. When it feels like it's all coming together, it's not going to feel like mozzarella yet, but when it feels like it's all starting to come together, like I can move it from one hand to another without it falling apart, when I get to that point, then we're ready to put it in hot water. So I'm going to keep doing this for a little bit, probably another 2 or 3 minutes, and then when it's ready, we'll go to the next step. Okay, I've squeezed out about as much whey as I can from our ball here of cheese. So the next thing I did is I have a pot of very hot water. This was water that I brought to a boil in the teapot, and we poured into this pot here. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of salt to that and give it a quick stir. And then we're going to transfer our cheese ball into the hot water. And just gently kind of lay it in there. That is hot. Okay, we're going to let that sit in there for about 2 minutes or so, and then I'm going to work it a little bit with a wooden spoon to kind of just press it together and get it to come together as mozzarella cheese. All right, well, it's been a couple minutes, so now what I'm going to do is kind of just press at my cheese ball here and try to kind of squeeze it together. It should be getting a little bit, not sticky, but like stretchy. And then I'm going to take it from the hot water and I'm going to move it into some ice water that I prepared, some cold water here. And that's just going to cool the cheese ball and make it a little easier for me to work with it so that I'm not totally burning my hands. Okay, so now at this point what I want to do is just squeeze it and form it more into that ball. And I'm just going to keep working it like this. Now, if you're doing smaller cheese balls, you probably only have to put it in the hot water, work it, cool it, maybe get it in the hot water one more time and work it, and then it's fine, it's ready. But because this ball is so big, the one that I'm making here, I may have to go into the hot water bath a couple times just to get this to melt together. And that's what we're doing. We're melting the curd. We're getting it hot enough to it's at a melting point so I can press it together into a ball. And you'll know your cheese is ready when it gets kind of shiny and kind of stretchy and doesn't really fall apart when you just break it apart with your hands. So I'm going to keep working this and I'll bring you back. Okay, well, I finished moving it between the hot water and the cold water and squeezing out as much of the whey and the water as I could. Like I said, you're always going to get better results with fresh raw milk, but use what you've got. It's better than throwing it in the garbage. I'm going to take this, I'm going to get this in the refrigerator and let it chill. And As a matter, and then I'll show you what it looks like. But what I'm probably going to do with this ball is get it in the freezer, freeze it. That way I can shred it into shredded mozzarella. But let me get this refrigerated, and I'll be back as soon as the cheese is done. Well, the cheese had a chance to rest in the fridge, and it's set up. It should be ready to go. I'm just going to slice a piece off. Here's my cheese. And it tastes awesome. Like I said, if I'm going to use this on a pizza and I want to shred it, what I'll end up doing is I'll take this, freeze it, and that way when it's hard and frozen, it'll shred just fine. It's very difficult to shred a fresh mozzarella because it's very soft. So when you try to put it through the shredder, you end up making a mess. So the best way to do that is freeze this, shred it, and then it'll be ready to go. A couple things to point out though, like I said, the fresher the milk and the closer to raw milk, the better the outcome is going to be. And the hot water, when we're finished straining out the whey and you dip it in the hot water is really a very important part. You want to make sure it's very hot water. And if your hands aren't tough enough, just try to work with utensils, but get it in very hot water. The whole point is to melt the curd into the mozzarella. But aside from that, another cheese made from old milk. And I'm going to get this in the freezer, shred it up, and probably make a pizza out of it. And if you have any questions or want to know more about the process, or if you want to know how you can make ricotta cheese from the whey that we used when we made the mozzarella, leave it down in the comments below. If you want to know how we do anything else here on the homestead where we can save money and be a little bit more self-reliant, comment down below, share with your friends, like the video, and make sure to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.